President Donald Trump's visit to China began with hope of breakthroughs on outstanding issues of bilateral and global concerns. But the U.S. president's 43-hour trip to China seems to have been a non-event on these fronts. As details about policy achievements during Trump's China visit remain sketchy, let's now take a look at the events that made headlines. Underneath the friendly posture, both sides created a firewall of cybersecurity. The U.S. delegation entered China under an unprecedented digital lockdown. Personal phones, laptops and tablets were replaced by temporary clean devices with minimal data and restricted access. The U.S. delegation exchanged messages via tightly monitored systems. Officials were also asked to avoid hotel Wi-Fi and public charging stations. Donald Trump and Xi Jinping shook hands at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. Both leaders posed for a picture. Trump and Xi Jinping held bilateral talks at this venue and then headed to the 600-year-old Temple of Heaven. That's where Trump said that China is beautiful in response to a question on Taiwan.
How were your talks, sir?
It's great.
Did you talk about Taiwan?
Great place. Incredible. China is beautiful.
Did you talk about Taiwan, Mr. President?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, did you talk about Taiwan?
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press.
Behind the scenes, a heated exchange took place between Chinese and American journalists. The incident happened when the American journalist attempted to join President Trump's motorcade following the bilateral meeting. During the exchange, a Chinese journalist said, and I quote, "This is my country." On the second day of Trump's China visit, Xi took him for a tour of his 1,500-acre compound called Zhongnanhai. The U.S. president asked Xi if he often brings foreign dignitaries to the compound. Xi said that it's rare, but Russian President Putin had been there.
Other from other countries, presidents and prime ministers, does he bring them?
在其他的国家来的元首啊、总统啊，或者是总理什么的，您作为国家主席，也都会到这边来接待他们吗？
很少。对吧？这个地方我们首先以前外事活动都不在这里，后来有外事活动以后极少这个动作。
In the past, we never had.
The U.S. president seemed impressed by the roses in the Zhongnanhai gardens, and he also asked Xi Jinping to give him rose seeds for the White House Rose Garden.
These are the most beautiful roses anyone's ever seen. I asked the president, could you get me some for the rose garden? And he said, yes. I've never seen roses so big.
Among all the moments, one picture is going viral on social media. It shows Donald Trump and Xi Jinping sitting side by side. In this picture, Trump appears to be seated a little below Xi Jinping. The seat, in fact, seems small for his size, while Xi looks to be sitting above Trump in a similar-looking seat. According to the White House, U.S. President's height is 6'3", while Chinese President Xi Jinping is between 5'9" and 5'11". That would make the height difference between the two leaders at least 4 inches. But it appears to be a little less in real-life pictures. On his way back to Washington, the U.S. president was asked if he had questioned Xi about China's alleged cyber attacks on the U.S. The president responded saying the U.S. also spies on China.
No, I'm talking about spying. The question was asked to me yesterday, I guess. What about the fact that China's spying in the United States? I said, well, it's one of those things because we spy like hell on them too.
Trump's China visit seemed to be all about pleasantries, but no substantial takeaways have emerged for the U.S. president. Issues like Taiwan, Iran trade, and tech still remain unresolved. And joining us live from Washington, D.C. is Dr. Charles Kupchan, is a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. Dr. Kupchan, thank you very much for your time and joining us at this hour. I want to begin with your take on the optics that happened in China?
Well, I think that Trump really had one main objective in this trip, and that is to send a signal to Xi Jinping that he wants to try to lower the temperature, to de-escalate the building rivalry that we've seen over the last decade or so, really going back to the Obama era, then the Trump first term, then the Biden era. The relationship was really getting worse and worse. And I don't think that the effort was either successful or unsuccessful. This was the opening gambit. This was Trump offering his hand to Xi Jinping saying, hey, let's try to do better. Let's try to work together. Whether the Chinese are ready to respond, we don't yet know. We'll only know in the coming weeks and months when we see whether this opening by Trump leads to concrete efforts to work together on Iran, on Ukraine, on trade, on AI, on climate change, on the whole host of issues that are on the US-China agenda.
Dr. Kupchan, what do you think for you was the greatest takeaway from his trip? Because many analysts and many critics did say that they don't see anything or they don't see any outcome of this trip because at the end of the day, Trump was in China. He presented himself as a leader who is willing to talk and participate with China for the longest time in American history. But what really for you stood out in this trip?
You know, I'm not a big fan of Donald Trump on many foreign policy issues, but I give him credit for doing the right thing when it comes to China. The American foreign policy community is very hawkish on China, very much interested in a building confrontation, seeing China as a threat to the United States. And I do think that we're now in an era of globalization, of interdependence, of countries being fused together, where we need to find ways of working with others, including those that are on the other side of the ideological and geopolitical dividing line. So I give Trump credit for challenging that consensus in favor of confrontation with China and trying to hold out his hand and say, let's try to do better, Mr. Xi. Let's see if we can work together. What I don't know yet, what nobody knows yet, is whether this is going to work or whether this is an offer that in the end of the day will not be reciprocated by China.
Dr. Kupchan, lastly, comparing this with the last time both leaders met, that is President Xi and President Trump, President Xi looked more cold or colder back then. He also still looks cold towards Trump, and Trump presented a very awkward outlook or body language, sort of like fear or reserved. Did you read that?
Well, you know, first of all, I would point out that this was the first trip of an American president to China in almost 10 years. And that just speaks to this issue that I've been discussing, and that is, you know, these are the two superpowers, the two big gorillas on the block. They need to talk to each other. And in a sense, it's long overdue for an American president to be with the Chinese president in Beijing. That conversation needs to grow. I agree with you, however, that it was a somewhat awkward meeting. You look at the body language, you look at the degree to which almost nothing concrete was said in public, and clearly there was a discomfort there. I think in some respects, Xi Jinping didn't know what to make of the American president coming and trying to be nice to him, trying to find a way of breaking the ice and working together. It's an initial gambit. It may go nowhere, but as I said earlier, I think it was the right thing for Donald Trump to do.
Dr. Kupchan, it's good to see you. We'll have to end this discussion here. Thank you for talking to us today.
Good to see you too. Bye-bye.